My dear friends, the incisive Jewish journalist Yair Rosenberg asked a simple and important question in the well-respected Jewish online tablet magazine this week. He asked, why do conspiracy theories always land on Jews? Why do those seemingly innocuous Save the Children flags flown at QAnon rallies and at the U.S. Capitol link child trafficking to a secret cabal of liberal rapists and child killers financed by the Jews? While there has been much in the news about the QAnon videos and tweets of a Georgia congresswoman calling for the lynching of former President Obama and assassination of the current Speaker of the House, less in the news is the soft spot that Congresswoman Green and other conspiracy theorists have for wild anti-Jewish plots, like claiming the Israeli Mossad was behind the assassination of JFK, or that the Jewish Rothschild banking dynasty has been setting forest fires in America with a secret laser in space. The Georgia Congresswoman is far from the first one to spout anti-Semitism in Congress, and she will not be the last. Sometimes the anti-Semitism is checked and public apologies are made. For instance, after making blatantly anti-Semitic smears in 2019, another congresswoman named Representative Omar joined a House resolution publicly denouncing anti-Semitism and other forms of hate, and she apologized publicly and specifically for her own tweets. This week, however, no contrition for threatening violence to lynch or kill, and no condemnation for conspiracy theories on the floor of the House of Representatives, taken straight out of that infamous anti-Semitic playbook, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which raises the question, why does this keep happening? The answer, Yair Rosenberg contends, is that as long as there are conspiracy theorists seeking scapegoats to blame for problems, there will be anti-Semites. That's because anti-Semitism is the world's biggest conspiracy theory. Anti-Semitism constructs itself as a simple explanation for how the world works by blaming powerful, shadowy Jewish figures for all problems. This conspiratorial mindset invariably demonizes any Jews who accumulate wealth or status, from the Rothschilds to George Soros to the State of Israel, though it is not limited to those Jews. The reason figures like the Rothschilds or the fictional Elders of Zion remain targets today is that any conspiracy theorist seeking someone to blame for the world's ills is just one Google search click away from centuries of hate literature telling them that someone to blame is the Jew. In other words, you might start out as an impressionable surfer on the internet, free agent conspiracy theorist with no particular problem with Jews. But the deeper you dive into this conspiracy world, the more likely you will ultimately land on Jewish people as the culprits. Many recent conspiracy theories follow this trajectory to anti-Semitism, from bizarre ravings about lizard people linked to Jews, to Rothschild Zionists, to QAnon. So once any person like this Georgia congresswoman has decided that an invisible hand is behind all the problems, it's only a matter of time before they decide it belongs to an invisible Jew. Beyond explaining the thought process of cranks, why does this matter? because it helps societies identify people with anti-Semitic mindsets, and it can help us reduce their numbers, even if they will always be around, especially online. What's clear, though, is that innocent individuals who become prone to conspiracy theories, whatever the person's ideology or political party, they are most susceptible to anti-Semitic appeals. This means that a key component in any effort to counter anti-Semitism must entail condemning and combating rather than condoning or simply brushing aside the conspiracy theories of QAnon and the simplistic thinking that underlies them, because when you dig below the surface of the signs and flags, you will find that the rage and explanation for our nation and world's problems oddly always lands on the Jews. To be clear, Jews can and should have different political views in proposing different solutions to the same societal challenges. I am grateful that before I became a rabbi, I studied public policy with Jewish Republicans, Democrats, and independents during my years of graduate school at the Kennedy School of Government. But what gets lost in conspiracy theory-laced political debates are the anti-Semitic underpinnings we ignore at our own peril, not only as Jews, but as a society. Remember, anti-Semitism has nothing to do with Judaism. Let me repeat that. Anti-Semitism has nothing to do with Judaism. It's what others say about Jews or ultimately do to Jews. Looking back at human history, one can make a compelling argument that often the barometer of a nation or society's health in terms of decency and morality is the way that nation or society treated Jews and Jew hatred. Just after the United States House of Representatives conducted its first impeachment trial of former President Trump last year, I attended a small group meeting on anti-Semitism when, lo and behold, Jewish Congressman Adam Schiff addressed us, not about impeachment, but about anti-Semitism. He shared widespread reports in far-right media about, actually went mainstream, how Adam Schiff's sister was married to the daughter of Jewish financier George Soros. Congressman Schiff then discussed how that one declaration was both comical and dangerous. The comical part is that Adam Schiff doesn't even have a sister. Conspiracy theorists made it up. Far more dangerous, he said, is the implication that a wealthy Jew is controlling an entire political party and pulling the strings as part of a powerful, wealthy Jewish conspiracy straight out of the pages of the anti-Semitic tract about a secret and invisible cabal of Jews that inspired Hitler, and now that's been normalized in America in 2020, 2021. This week in the Torah is when Moses and our Jewish ancestors arrive at Mount Sinai to receive Aseret HaDibrot, which we call the 10 Commandments. The first 5, I am God who wants you free. No idol worship. Don't take God's name in vain. Observe Shabbat like we're doing right now. Honor parents. These 5 are all about the human relationship to God. The second 5, not murdering innocent people, not committing adultery, not stealing, not bearing false witness or lying, and not coveting. These 5 are all about the relationship that people have with one another. Dozens of other ethical and spiritual guideposts will follow, demanding proper treatment of strangers and care for widows, orphans, and the poor. So why Why have the Jews who gave the world these 10 and other commandments, why have the Jews who have always been among the smallest of peoples attracted the hatred of the most evil people over the course of history? There are many answers, but one is clearly resistance to this week's reminder of what is required at a bare minimum for any civil and decent society to exist. It all derives from the God of Judaism, the God of ethical monotheism, one God whose principal concern is the way we treat others, a God whose principal demand is moral and ethical behavior. This is the God with whom we entered into an eternal covenant from Sinai until now. And my friends, this is the God that the Nazis at Camp Auschwitz launched an all-out assault against. In case you didn't know, Hitler's violent butchers continued to wear on their military belt buckles the words, Gott mit uns, God is with us, Nazis. Or as Hitler wrote himself, and I quote, I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of God. By defeating the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord, end quote. His battle was not only against the God of the 10 Commandments this week, but all of the Torah's guideposts for a more equitable society, from caring for strangers to even limiting the amount of time slaves served before being set free in Israelite society. The 10 Commandments and mitzvahs in general give us boundaries for decency instead of chaos and anarchy. In Judaism, holiness itself means boundaries. As Reformed Jewish commentator Rabbi Salkin puts it, when God prepares our ancestors for this moment of receiving the 10 Commandments, God tells our ancestors, among other things, not to come close to that mountain, but to set boundaries around it. This is a basic rule of religious life that Judaism introduced. Everything that is holy has boundaries set around it. Shabbat tonight and tomorrow is set off from the other 6 days of the week. Marriage is different from other relationships. The boundaries and civility of Jewish life throughout history, a life of mitzvah, and distinguishing right from wrong made Jews loathsome in the eyes of those who looked away or who led uncivil lives or who celebrated moral chaos and cruelty. Even in the name of religion. Clearly that trope continues today. And so does the misreading of what the first commandment is. It's not thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's number 2. The first one is I am the God who wants you free. And freedom is much broader than those leading Christian nationalist ministers who address large DC crowds 1 month ago tonight on the eve of the Electoral College certification before storming the Capitol the next day. God is raising up an army of patriots. Pastor Greg Locke said in motivating the massive crowd, to which Reverend Brian Gibson added, I quote, the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ started America and we are going to take our nation back. History has shown that this medieval idea that religious freedom can only be sustained by one small, narrow group of people controlling the levers of power only leads to more conspiracy theories, anti-Semitism, racism, and worse. And to be clear, virtually all Christian leaders, all of my ministerial friends in Memphis, no matter what their skin color, denomination, or political affiliation, would agree. Just ask the Reverend Martin Luther King's successor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, Reverend Raphael Warnock. The development of a more just society, however, will never result from preaching or posting more copies of the 10 Commandments this week. You ever notice in those 1960s civil rights videos outside Central High in Little Rock or other schools in Mississippi, the venom and hate and yelling of the white mob, not just men, but well-dressed and well-coiffed ladies screaming at innocent black kids. You can bet that most of those ladies knew the Lord's Prayer by heart. Anyone who thinks our nation's moral decline comes from not memorizing this week's 10 Commandments or the Lord's Prayer need only remember that whether it was attacking Jews around Easter in medieval times, attacking black Americans in the 1960s, or targeting Muslim Americans today, the yellers hollering the N-word and those who post photos with assault rifles next to Americans who don't look like them are often church-going folk who invoke religious beliefs. My dear friends, on this Shabbat Yitro, what's lacking is not right religious belief, but right religious action. The kind of goodness the Torah is pointing toward at Sinai. Only when people decide to be humble and kind, when people understand that ethical monotheism means that there are not two sides to everything, like whether advocating violence is permissible or whether the Holocaust ever happened. When people decide instead beyond lip service or keeping quiet, when people decide to call out right from wrong and remind folks that according to the Torah, honesty, acceptance, and equality are godly. When people actually start living that way, then right religious action will be back in the life of our nation and world. Bible believers and rabbis do not get a pass any more than atheists or secularists when goodness, love, and how we treat each other is the fundamental litmus test for one nation under God. Through thick and thin, I believe that the Torah's loving prescription for our nation and world remains humanity's best hope. Amen.